Elena Pierce sleeps in her 2003 Honda Civic and washes her face in gas station bathrooms, carrying everything she owns in a backpack. But when armed men corner a blind woman in an underground poker room during a summer thunderstorm, Elena's instinct to protect the helpless overrides her fear, and she stands between them with nothing but her voice, unaware that the man watching from the shadows is Alessandro Valenti, a Mafia boss who lost his own child years ago. Lightning cracks outside the basement windows. The summer heat has turned to cold rain hammering against the metal doors like fists demanding entry. The underground poker room sits deep beneath a Manhattan office building, hidden from the world above. Green felt tables glow under brass lighting. Cigar smoke curls thick in the stale air, mixing with the smell of whiskey and expensive cologne. Elena stands in the center of the room. 3 armed men in tailored suits surround a woman holding a white cane. The blind woman trembles, her fingers reaching out, finding nothing but air. Guards stand at every door, their hands resting on weapons that cost more than Elena's entire life. Elena has exactly $200 in her pocket. Everything she owns in the world. Her voice shakes but she does not move. Leave her alone. She just wants to go home. The blind woman clutches Elena's worn jacket. The fabric is thin, faded, held together by threads and desperation. Marco, Alessandro's nephew, sneers from across the room. Who the hell is this homeless rat? Gino moves forward. His footsteps echo on the concrete floor. But from the shadowed corner booth, a hand rises. Just one hand, fingers spread in a gesture of absolute command. The man attached to that hand has not moved to protect anyone in 8 years. Not since the night his son Oliver stopped breathing in the nursery. He still keeps locked on the 3rd floor of his penthouse. The whole room goes silent. Stop. The word drops like a stone into still water. Nobody touches her. The voice belongs to Alessandro Valenti. 52 years old but looking older. 6'2", shoulders broad as a door frame, built from decades of control and consequence. His Italian wool suit costs $17,000. His watch is vintage Rolex, scratched from use, not polished for display. A scar runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, the scar from a knife fight at 23, the scar he never hid because hiding weakness is weaker than showing it. His dark eyes, storm gray in certain light, move from Elena to the blind woman and back again. In 15 years of working for him, Marco has never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at this homeless girl. Like she is a puzzle he needs to solve. Like she is something that matters. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. But what Elena did not know was that her single act of courage just put a target on her back, and the man who would try to destroy her was already sitting in that room, watching her, waiting. Now let us go back. Let us go back to the beginning. 3 weeks earlier. Dawn breaks over New York City in shades of gray and purple. Elena Pierce wakes in her Honda Civic at a rest stop off the Westchester Parkway. The car smells like stale coffee and the particular loneliness of people who have nowhere else to go. She is 31 years old, but her eyes carry the weight of someone who has lived 50. Her hair is dark brown, always pulled back, always clean despite having showered in a gas station bathroom yesterday morning. Her hands are calloused from years of cleaning other people's homes. There is a scar on her left wrist, thin and white, running horizontally like a line she once tried to cross but did not. Elena reaches for her wallet. The leather is cracked. Inside, bills add up to exactly $217. She counts them 3 times. The numbers do not change. She has 3 days to find $150,000. Not wants to. Has to. The deadline is written on a letter sitting on her passenger seat, official and cruel and printed on paper that costs more than Elena's weekly groceries. The letter says foreclosure. The letter says if she does not pay, they will take the house that is already not hers anymore, take the house she lost when her mother died without insurance and without mercy. There is no house anymore. There has not been a house for 18 months. But the debt remains, sharp and permanent as a blade. Elena starts the engine. The Civic turns over with a sound like a creature with asthma. She drives to the diner where she works breakfast shift, where the owner cuts her pay every month but never fires her because somewhere in the back of his tired mind he remembers she once saved a man choking on his eggs. The diner smells like bacon grease and burnt coffee. It is 5:30 in the morning. Elena puts on her uniform, a black dress that has been mended 7 times and washed 200 times. The fabric is soft now, falling apart in slow motion. She works 9 hours. Her feet ache. A man at the counter leaves her no tip. A woman at table 4 sends back her eggs 3 times. By the time Elena clocks out, her total in tips is $4.60. She counts it carefully. She adds it to the 217. Now she has $221.60. The debt is still $149,778.40. It is dark when Elena drives to the gas station on Fordham Road. She parks in the back where the cameras have been broken for months. She takes her backpack from the trunk. Inside, 1 change of clothes, a toothbrush, a container of generic shampoo, and a small object wrapped in cloth. She unwraps it carefully. It is a gold locket, tarnished from age and neglect. Inside, a photograph so old the faces have faded to ghosts. Her mother's face. Elena's face, at age 7, before everything broke. She wraps it again. She closes her eyes. She does not allow herself to cry because crying will dehydrate her and water is expensive and she only has the money for water that comes free from the public fountains. The rain starts that evening. Not a drizzle. A real storm, the kind that comes in summer and reminds you that nature is bigger and crueler than any human being. Elena drives to the lot behind the abandoned warehouse on Broadway. 3 other cars sit there, spaced far apart. People like Elena. People with nowhere else to go. She sits in the driver's seat and watches the rain hammer the windshield. The sound fills the car, fills her head, fills everything. The wipers move back and forth. Back and forth. Back and forth. At 10 o'clock, her phone buzzes. A text message from an unknown number, need house cleaners. Penthouse job. $30 an hour. Cash. Interested. Elena's hands shake. $30 an hour is more than double what she makes at the diner. It is almost enough. It is not quite enough, but it is almost enough, and almost is more than she has had in months. She texts back, yes. The response comes immediately, tomorrow. 11 a.m. 2847, 5th Avenue. Penthouse. Ask for Valenti. Elena does not know what she has just agreed to. She does not know that 2847, 5th Avenue is one of the most expensive addresses in Manhattan. She does not know that the penthouse belongs to a man who has lost everything that mattered and who has spent 8 years building a wall so high and so thick that nothing good can get in and nothing real can get out. She does not know that sometimes, all it takes to demolish a wall like that is one small act of ordinary courage. One homeless girl standing between 3 armed men and a stranger's terror. One girl saying no when saying no could get her killed. The rain continues through the night. The rain continues through the night. By dawn, it has washed the streets clean, but Elena Pierce does not notice beauty. She notices only survival. At 6:47 in the morning, she wakes in the back seat of her 2003 Honda Civic. Her neck is stiff from sleeping against the door. Condensation coats the windows like a second skin. The parking lot behind the closed shopping center is empty except for 3 other cars, spaced far apart, each one a small island of desperation. She sits up slowly, her back cracking, and her fingers find the gold locket beneath her sports bra. Cool metal. Warm skin. This is how she starts every morning, by touching her mother's locket, by remembering that she is not entirely alone, even though no one knows she exists. She counts her money on the cracked vinyl seat. 5 20s. 4 10s. 1 5. 2 1s. $200 total. This is everything she owns in the world that is not in her backpack. The bills are worn soft from handling, creased from being folded into different hiding places. $32 a day. That is what she allows herself. $32 to eat, to put gas in the car that barely starts, to buy phone minutes so the job calls can reach her. The math never changes. The numbers never improve. She has done this calculation 10,000 times, and it has never once come out in her favor. Elena pulls a clean shirt from her backpack. It is white, or it was white once. Now it is the color of old paper, worn soft from washing in gas station sinks and drying on her car's antenna. She changes in the back seat, turning away from the windows even though no one is watching. The scar tissue on her back pulls tight when she moves. 8 years since she escaped. 8 years since she learned that her voice could be a weapon, but only if she used it fast enough, loud enough, before the fist came down. 8 years of that scar tissue reminding her that her body is a map of everything she survived. At 7:15, she is at the gas station on Amsterdam Avenue. The bathroom smells like industrial cleaner and human despair. The fluorescent lights buzz like a nest of angry wasps. Elena washes her face in the sink, watching her reflection in the mirror. The face that looks back is not the face she remembers having. This face is too thin. The eyes are hollow, the kind of hollow that comes from too many nights of not sleeping, too many days of not eating enough. She is 26 years old, but the mirror shows a woman who has lived 40 hard years, who has already used up most of what life was supposed to give her. She brushes her teeth with her finger because she cannot afford a toothbrush. The water from the tap is cold and tastes like rust. Behind her, a woman in business clothes enters, sees Elena, and hurries to the far stall without making eye contact. Elena knows this look. She has seen it thousands of times. The look that says you do not belong here. The look that says you are invisible, or worse, you are visible but should not be. She finishes quickly and leaves before the woman finishes. The public library is her sanctuary, the one place in the city where no one questions her presence. At 10:30 in the morning, Mrs. Chen, the head librarian, is working the desk. Mrs. Chen is 62 years old with silver hair and the kind of sadness in her eyes that suggests she has lost something important and has learned to live with the loss. She does not ask Elena questions. She does not make her feel ashamed. She simply nods when Elena sits down at the computer terminal and pretends not to notice that Elena has been there every single day for the past 3 months. Elena logs into the job website. The account has been the same for 2 years. The password is her mother's maiden name and the year she was born. She scrolls through listings. Fast food hiring. Warehouse work. A housekeeping position that requires references she does not have. An opening for a night shift cleaner at a hotel in Midtown. $8 an hour. Better than nothing. She clicks apply even though she knows nothing will come of it. Her stomach makes a sound like a wounded animal. She has not eaten since yesterday. The last meal was 3 slices of pizza she found in a dumpster behind a restaurant on Columbus, still warm, barely touched. She had sat on a bench and eaten it slowly, savoring it like it was filet mignon, trying to make it last. It is 8 o'clock now. 26 hours without real food. She drinks water from the fountain instead. It fills her belly with something that is not nourishment but feels like it. Mrs. Chen brings her a granola bar. It appears on the desk next to Elena's computer like a small miracle, wrapped in a paper package, placed there with such quiet kindness that Elena wants to cry. She does not cry. Her tears dried up somewhere on a Greyhound bus 8 years ago, somewhere between the old life and the new life, somewhere in the middle of running. She thanks Mrs. Chen without meeting her eyes. The librarian simply nods and returns to her work, both of them pretending this exchange did not happen, both of them knowing it is the only way Elena can accept help without breaking. By evening, the sky has changed. Clouds gather above Manhattan like smoke from an invisible fire. The air feels heavier, charged, the way it feels before a storm. Elena drives to her usual spot, the parking lot behind the abandoned warehouse on Broadway. 3 cars already there. Other people like her. Other invisible people. She pulls in and parks 2 spaces away from a blue sedan with mismatched hubcaps. At 8:42, lightning splits the sky into bright pieces. The rain that follows is not gentle. It is violent and cold, summer rain that carries the anger of the season. Elena turns her key in the ignition. Nothing. She tries again. The engine cranks, wheezes, and dies. She waits. Tries again. The battery is almost dead. She has maybe 10 more tries before it is completely gone. The rain hammers the windshield. The wipers move back and forth. Back and forth. Back and forth. She cannot stay in the car. The other drivers will see her, will report her to security, will get her towed. She grabs her backpack, pulls her thin jacket over her head, and runs into the downpour. The streets are becoming rivers. Water rushes over the curbs and floods the sidewalks. She runs without direction, just running away from the lot, away from exposure, away from the possibility of being discovered. Her clothes are soaked through within seconds. The cold is sharp like a blade cutting through fabric and skin. That is when she sees it. A narrow alleyway between 2 buildings, and in the alley, a door. Stone. Metal handle. No sign above it. No indication of what lies beyond. Thunder rolls across the sky like a gunshot. Elena does not think. She simply ducks through the door to escape the storm. Stone steps lead downward into darkness. The air changes immediately. It is warm and thick. Cigar smoke rises up from below, mixing with the smell of leather and expensive cologne. She descends slowly, her wet clothes dripping on each step, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The stairs seem to go down forever. The underground room opens before her like a secret world that should not exist. The ceiling is low, the walls are painted deep burgundy, and the light comes from fixtures shaped like old gas lamps. A long mahogany bar runs along one wall. Behind it, bottles of whiskey and vodka catch the amber light. But it is the tables that dominate the room. Poker tables. 6 of them, arranged in 2 rows. Men sit at 4 of the tables. Expensive suits. Gold watches. The kind of men who make decisions that ruin other people's lives over cocktails and cigars. Elena freezes. She should not be here. Every instinct tells her to turn around, to go back up the stairs, to disappear into the rain. But the door closes behind her with a soft click, and a man in a dark suit notices her. His eyes move from her wet face to her soaked clothes to her backpack held against her chest like a shield. "Wrong door, sweetheart," he says. His voice is not unkind, but it is final. Like a closing statement in court. Like a door being locked. Before Elena can respond, there is a sound from across the room. A crash. A cry. Not from a man. From a woman. The silence in the underground poker room is absolute. Like a held breath before the gunshot. Metal poker chips freeze mid-click. Cigar smoke hangs in the amber light like fog over a graveyard. Elena Pierce stands dripping wet in the doorway, her soaked clothes clinging to her body, her backpack held against her chest like armor. Behind her, the November storm hammers against the metal door she just ducked through. In front of her, 3 men in black suits are escorting a woman toward a back room. The woman is blind. Mid-30s, elegant despite the trembling in her hands, moving with a white cane that catches the light like a bone. One of the men laughs. The sound is cruel, measured, designed to hurt. "Maybe we should help you find your way, Sophia," he says. The blind woman's voice trembles like a candle about to gutter out. "I just want to call my brother Alessandro. Please. Just let me call him." Elena does not think. This is what saves her and damns her all at once. She walks forward, her bare feet soundless on the carpeted floor, and positions herself between the blind woman and the 3 men. "Leave her alone." The man laughs again, but his hand moves toward his jacket. Toward something Elena can see the outline of. A gun. Visible under the tailored fabric like a tumor under skin. The other men shift. One of them grabs Elena's arm, not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough to communicate that she has made a terrible mistake. Then a voice cuts through the room. Deep. Solid. Like an oath carved into stone. Marco. Call off your dogs. The man appears from the corner shadows like he materialized from the smoke itself. Tall. 6'2", maybe 3. Broad-shouldered, the kind of broad that comes from decades of carrying weight that has nothing to do with muscle. His suit costs more than everything Elena has owned in her entire life, Italian silk, tailored to perfection, open at the collar to show the chest of a man who is not afraid to be seen. His hair is dark, silvered at the temples, swept back without vanity. But it is his eyes that stop her breathing. Grey like a winter sky. Penetrating like a surgeon's knife. A thin scar runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, perfectly silver, perfectly deliberate. Alessandro Valenti. She does not know his name yet, but she knows in that moment that this is a man who has decided things and made them true through sheer will alone. Marco, the man holding Elena's arm, releases her instantly. Steps back. The other two men do the same. Valenti approaches his sister Sofia, takes her hand with a gentleness that seems impossible in such a large man. Gino will take you home. Now. A man appears from nowhere. There are always men appearing from nowhere in places like this, and leads Sofia toward a private exit. She turns back once, reaches out in the direction of Elena's voice. Thank you, she whispers. Thank you for standing. Then she is gone, and Elena is alone with Alessandro Valenti and the weight of his attention. He looks at her for a long moment. Studies her. The way a jeweler studies a stone. Not to determine its value, but to understand what it is made of. You, he says finally. What is your name? Elena Pierce, sir. You do not belong here. I know. I am sorry. I will leave. Why did you protect her? Elena's throat is dry. Her hands are still shaking. She needed help. Valenti nods slowly. Reaches into his jacket, and Elena's entire body goes rigid, but he withdraws only a business card. It is made of cream-colored paper, heavier than normal paper, the kind that costs more per card than Elena spends on food in a week. He presses it into her palm. If you ever need anything, he says, you call that number. Then he turns and walks back into the shadows, and the other men pretend Elena no longer exists. She stands there for 5 minutes, maybe more. Cardboard-soaked, shaking, the business card so heavy in her hand it feels like it might pull her down through the floor. Then she climbs the stone stairs back up to the street level, back to the rain, back to the world where invisible people are supposed to remain invisible. But what Elena Pierce did not understand in that moment was that Marco Valenti, Alessandro's nephew, just watched a homeless woman protect the family and earn his uncle's attention in a way no one had managed in 8 years. And Marco had just decided that she was the perfect weapon to use against him. 3 days later, Elena sits in her 2003 Honda Civic with the engine running and the heat blasting at full force. It is 3:22 in the morning. She cannot sleep. Every time her eyes close she sees the blind woman's face, that terrible moment of vulnerability, the trembling in her hands. Elena touches the scars on her back through her shirt, the raised lines that map her skin like a geography of pain. Harold Brennan. Her ex-landlord. 8 years ago, when she still believed in the world. When she still believed that people were good. That landlords who offered to forgive 3 months of rent were good. That men who wanted to help you were good. She was wrong about all of it. The scars run in every direction. Crisscrossing patterns from a leather belt and what came after. Elena never told anyone. Never filed a police report. The one time she went to an emergency room, she paid in cash under a false name and never went back. She just saved for 2 weeks, packed everything she owned into a backpack, and drove away in this car that she has been living in ever since. The parking lot is empty. The gas station lights are fluorescent and cold. Elena pulls $47 from her wallet. This leaves her with exactly $153 until payday at the diner, and fills her tank. She is pumping the last gallon when a black Mercedes pulls into the lot. Not aggressively. Not threatening. Just present. Waiting. A man steps out. The same man who took Alessandro's sister away 3 nights ago. Gino. Dark suit, dark eyes, the kind of face that has seen things most people cannot imagine. He walks toward Elena with his hands visible, palms out. "Miss Pierce," he says, and his voice is surprisingly gentle. "Mr. Valenti would like to offer you breakfast." Elena's hands go numb. The pump nozzle falls from her fingers. "I do not want any trouble," she whispers. Gino nods, as if he has heard this exact sentence many times before. "No trouble. Just breakfast." The Mercedes smells like leather and expensive cologne and the kind of clean that comes from having someone detail it every single day. Elena sits in the back seat, her damp clothes dripping on the black leather, staring at the city passing by the tinted windows. They drive deeper into Manhattan, to a neighborhood where buildings have doormen and restaurants do not have menus with prices. They pull into an alley. There is a small Italian cafe with windows draped in heavy curtains. Gino escorts her through a side entrance, down a narrow hallway, into a private back room. Alessandro Valenti sits alone at a round table set for 2. Before him, espresso, untouched. Pastries arranged on a white ceramic plate. He gestures to the chair across from him. "Sit. Please." Elena sits. Her hands shake as she places them in her lap. She does not touch the food. Valenti studies her the way he studied her 3 nights ago. Slowly. Thoroughly. As if reading a language he thought was dead. "You protected my sister," he says finally. "Why?" "She needed help. You were afraid. I could see it in your eyes." "Yes. But you stood anyway." Elena says nothing. The silence between them stretches like taffy being pulled. Outside the small window high on the wall, the city hums with its predatory rhythm. Valenti reaches beneath the table and produces an envelope. Cream-colored paper. Heavy. He slides it across the table with one scarred finger. $10,000. "Thank you for what you did." Elena stares at the envelope. $10,000. She makes $400 a week at the diner on her best shifts. This is 2.5 months of survival. This is an apartment. This is breathing. She does not touch it. "I cannot take this," she says. "Why not?" "Because people do not give money without wanting something back. That is not how the world works." Valenti's mouth curves almost imperceptibly upward. It is not quite a smile. It is something rarer. "Smart. But I want nothing. Consider it a debt paid. My sister was in danger. You risked yourself. This is the price of that risk." Elena's hands move of their own accord. She opens the envelope. Sees the bills, crisp, new, unmarked. Arranged in neat stacks. She closes her eyes. When she opens them again, tears are burning at the edges, and she has to blink them away with ferocious control. "Why?" she whispers. "Why would you help me? I am nobody." Valenti leans back in his chair. His expensive watch catches the light, gold, with a face so complex it must require a specialist to wind. "You remind me that not everyone is for sale. That some people still have something money cannot touch. That is rare. I do not take it for granted." At a nearby table, Gino exchanges a look with another man that neither will ever fully articulate. In 15 years, they have not seen Alessandro Valenti treat anyone the way he is treating this woman. There is no hunger in it. No possession. Only something that looks almost like recognition. Like he has seen something of himself reflected in her, and it has shaken something loose in his chest that he thought was welded shut forever. That afternoon, Elena goes to an actual grocery store with $40 of the $10,000. She buys bread. Real bread, not the stale loaves from the damaged goods bin. She buys cheese, fruit, a rotisserie chicken that is still warm. She is walking through the parking lot, her arms full of bags, when a voice stops her. Elena Pierce. Marco Valenti leans against her car. He is beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful. Smooth features, expensive cologne, a smile that shows teeth but no warmth. Two men stand beside him in identical postures, identical expressions. Waiting. I do not want trouble, Elena says immediately. No trouble at all. Marco steps away from her car, circles her slowly. She can feel his eyes on her back, on the spot where the scars run beneath her shirt. See, my uncle is getting soft in his old age. Making bad decisions. Decisions that could destroy everything he spent 30 years building. And I think you are one of those bad decisions. Elena tries to move past him, but his hand closes around her arm. Not hard enough to bruise. Hard enough to control. I know about you, Elena. I know about Harold Brennan. I know about that apartment building 8 years ago. I know about what happened in that room when he locked the door. I know about the screaming. I know about the scars you hide underneath your shirt. Elena's blood stops moving. Marco smiles wider. So here is how this works. When I need you to deliver a message to my uncle, you deliver it. When I need you to be somewhere, you are there. And if you refuse, if you disappoint me in any way, well. Harold Brennan still lives in New York. Still drinks at the same bar on Fifth Avenue. Still talks about the girl who got away. Would be a terrible shame if he learned where to find you. He releases her arm. I will be in touch, he says, and walks away with his men like they have simply finished a pleasant conversation. Elena stands alone in the parking lot, her groceries at her feet, her heart beating so hard she thinks it might crack her ribs. She does not know that there are cameras in this parking lot. She does not know that Valenti has just watched his nephew threaten her. She does not know that at this exact moment, in an office 40 floors above the city, Alessandro Valenti is watching the footage for the second time, his hand shaking with rage that burns like liquid metal in his veins. She only knows that the walls are closing in. That every place she thought was safe is rotting from the inside. That she is not invisible anymore, and being seen is the most dangerous thing that can happen. The rain hammered against the windshield like bullets. 3:47 in the morning. Aria Santos sat in her 2003 Honda Civic parked behind a closed laundromat on Fifth Avenue, her hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles had gone white. Through the rain-blurred glass, she could see the old apartment building across the street, 6 stories of rotting brick and dark windows like dead eyes staring back at her. She had $200 to her name. $200. The burner phone on the passenger seat buzzed again. A text from a number she did not recognize, show up alone, or he tells everyone what you really are. Aria's breath came shallow. Her mother's gold locket hung against her collarbone, the only thing she owned that weighed more than metal, it weighed memory. She pressed her palm against it through her shirt. The metal was cold. She thought about little Sophie, age 6, asleep in the shelter across town where Aria had managed to get her a bed for the night. She thought about how Sophie's hand had felt in hers when they said goodbye. Small. Trusting. Unaware that her mother was walking into a trap. The apartment building. The one with the lock that stuck. The one where, 8 years ago, a man named Harold Brennan had owned her body and her silence. The phone buzzed again, 9:45 p.m. Tonight. But what Aria did not know was that she was being watched. Not by Brennan. By 12 men in dark jackets positioned across the city, their earpieces crackling with the voice of their boss. Alessandro Valenti sat in a penthouse office 40 stories above the street, watching security footage of a parking lot from 2 weeks earlier, watching his nephew Marco corner a woman with a grocery bag and a voice that trembled like a candle in the wind. Valenti's hands shook as he rewound the video for the second time. Marco's words played through the speakers. Harold Brennan still lives in New York. Still drinks at the same bar on Fifth Avenue. Still talks about the girl who got away. Valenti had built an empire on the principle that nobody threatened what was his. But Aria Santos was not his. Yet, she was something else entirely, something he recognized because he had spent 15 years learning to bury it. He was learning to build a nursery again. At 4:15 p.m. that same afternoon, Aria was buying bread from a street vendor 3 blocks from the public library where she worked nights shelving books. The vendor, Mrs. Chen, smiled at her the way she always did, with the specific kindness reserved for people who counted change in front of you. "Whole wheat today, Aria? You like?" "Yes, thank you, Mrs. Chen." The whole wheat. That was when the white news van pulled up to the curb and killed its engine. Sophie Langford stepped out before the van doors finished opening. She was 41 years old, with bleached blonde hair blow-dried into a helmet, wearing a dress that cost more than Aria's monthly shelter fees. She carried a microphone and a smile that showed all of her teeth. Behind her, a camera operator with a red light blinking like a tiny heart. "That is her," Sophie said, pointing directly at Aria. Aria's stomach dropped. She knew that face, Sophie Langford, the city councilwoman's daughter, the social media influencer with 400,000 followers and a reputation for destroying people on live broadcast. Sophie's voice was loud, pitched for the camera. "This is Sophie Langford coming to you live from downtown New York, where I am about to expose something very disturbing. This woman, Aria Santos, has been manipulating one of the city's most powerful businessmen by playing the victim. She is a con artist. She is a parasite." People stopped walking. Phones came out. The camera zoomed in on Aria's face, and she felt the lens like a blade against her skin. "I have witnesses," Sophie continued, "who say she has been collecting money from charitable organizations for years. Multiple identities. Multiple stories. All of it lies." "That is not true," Aria whispered. "Then explain why you are showing up at charity galas in borrowed designer dresses. Why you are being driven around in expensive vehicles. You saw a vulnerable man who was grieving, and you pounced like a predator." The crowd swelled. Camera flashes. Someone shouting. Aria's face burned, not with shame, because she had done nothing wrong, but with the specific heat of being seen. Being known. Being destroyed in front of strangers who would remember her name for all the wrong reasons. "I do not know what you are talking about," Aria said, her voice barely audible. Sophie smiled. "The evidence does not lie, sweetheart. Neither do screenshots." The news van's mobile Wi-Fi signal went live. The footage, already recording, began uploading to Sophie's social media channels in real time. 400,000 people watching. Then 500,000. The comments section exploded with cruelty, accusations, assumptions, character assassinations built on half-truths and outright lies. Aria turned and walked away, but she could feel the camera following her. She could feel the eyes of the crowd. She could feel herself being erased and rewritten simultaneously, transformed from a person into a story, and not a kind one. Across the city, in a luxury office on the 42nd floor, Alessandro Valenti watched the broadcast on a wall-mounted monitor, his jaw clenched so tight he thought his teeth might crack. Beside him, Gino stood perfectly still, waiting. "Get her," Valenti said quietly. "Where is she now?" "The library. She works nights. She will be there in an hour." Gino left without asking questions. He had been with Valenti for 17 years. He knew what this tone of voice meant. That night at 9:47 p.m., Aria sat in her Honda Civic in the rain. A different storm than 2 weeks ago, but the same thunder, the same lightning that lit up the dark. Her hand shook on the steering wheel. The old apartment building loomed ahead. Harold Brennan had texted again, "Come inside. Room 302. Bring nothing but yourself." She thought about the 8 years she had spent running. 8 years of not speaking his name out loud. 8 years of showering in gas station bathrooms, of pretending the scars on her back were from something else, anything else. 8 years of telling Sophie, her sweet, curious daughter, that they were going on an adventure when really they were disappearing. Her phone buzzed with notifications. 87 of them. Messages from numbers she did not recognize. Con artist. Predator. Fraudster. Parasite. She pulled her mother's locket from beneath her shirt. The metal was warm now from her body heat. She opened it, her mother's face, so young, dead 15 years now. Dead before Aria had even met Harold Brennan. She thought, I could drive away. I could make the gas last 300 miles. I could really disappear this time. But then she saw her reflection in the rearview mirror. She saw the girl who had stood in an underground poker room and faced down armed men to protect someone else. She saw the woman who had let Alessandro Valenti see her scars. She thought of Oliver, Valenti's son, dead for 9 years but alive in every story his father had ever told her. She thought of the nursery that still existed on the penthouse floor, untouched, waiting. She thought, not anymore. She put the locket back around her neck and opened the car door into the rain. The street was empty. The rain fell in sheets, loud, erasing everything. Aria's feet splashed through puddles as she crossed toward the building. Lightning cracked across the sky and illuminated the broken windows. She reached for the apartment door handle. It opened before she touched it. Gino stood in the doorway, water dripping from his jacket. Miss Santos, you need to leave. Now. I cannot. I have to. Mr. Valenti knows about Brennan. He knows everything. The street filled with vehicles. Black SUVs materialized from the darkness like ghosts, no sirens, no flashing lights. Just the sound of rain and the grinding of hydraulic doors opening. 12 men in tactical black gear moved with the precision of a choreographed dance, flowing into the apartment building like water finding cracks. Alessandro Valenti stepped out of the lead vehicle, dressed in a black suit and cashmere coat that cost more than the building itself. The rain soaked his shoulders but he did not seem to notice. He walked directly to Aria and looked at her with eyes like a storm. You should have told me, he said. I do not need you to save me, Aria said, but her voice was shaking. I know. But you do not have to face him alone. From inside the building, shouting erupted. Screaming. The sound of bodies being slammed against walls. Harold Brennan was dragged out by 4 men, his hands zip-tied behind his back, his face the color of ash. He saw Valenti and started begging, I did not know she was with you. I swear, I did not know. Valenti walked toward him slowly. Each step deliberate. He crouched down to Brennan's level, his expensive suit touching the wet pavement without a flicker of concern. You put your hands on her for 8 years, Valenti said, his voice like thunder rolling across dead ground. You scarred her. You threatened her with a gun tonight. Harold's entire body trembled. She owed me. Silence. You are going to federal prison. 40 years minimum. I have evidence of 6 other women you abused. Medical records. Police reports they were too afraid to file. Testimony from neighbors who heard screaming and did nothing. And I have made sure that every single inmate in your cell block knows exactly what you did to those women. Death would be too quick. Too easy. Too merciful. You are going to live a long life behind bars, Harold. And every single day you will remember the woman you could not break. Valenti nodded, and his men dragged Brennan to a waiting NYPD vehicle, not his men, not his justice, but legitimate arrest, legitimate charges, 6 detectives on the payroll working official police business. Simultaneously, across the city in a high-rise penthouse, Sophie Langford was broadcasting live from her apartment. 40,000 viewers watching her speak about charity fraud, about predatory women, about her crusade for truth. Mid-sentence, every screen in her apartment switched input. Television, laptop, tablet, all of them showing the same video. Sophie and Marco meeting 3 weeks earlier. Audio crystal clear. We destroy the girl, Sophie said on the recording, we destroy Alessandro's judgment, and you take what is yours. And I get the social credit for exposing the fraud, Sophie's recorded voice said. Her 40,000 viewers became 200,000 as the clip went viral. Comments flooded in. Vicious. Immediate. Tags to her employers, her sponsors, her family. Then more footage. Sophie bribing a city official. Sophie fabricating evidence. Sophie's complete financial fraud laid bare on every screen. The FBI was already in the lobby of her building. In the underground poker room where Valenti's business conducted itself through cards and silence, Marco sat dealing, confident and smiling. Every man in the room was his family, or so he thought. Valenti walked in soaking wet from the rain. "Uncle, you look like hell," Marco said. "Stand up." "What?" "Stand up, Marco." Marco stood, confused. Every monitor in the room switched to the same evidence. Marco skimming $150,000 from family accounts. Marco selling information to rival families. Marco's plan to kill his uncle laid bare in text messages to Sophie Langford. The room went silent. The sound of rain on the windows. Nothing else. Every man present saw the evidence. They all looked away from Marco simultaneously. "You threatened an innocent woman to get to me," Valenti said, ice cold. "You worked with my enemies. You stole from our family." Marco backed away. "I can explain." "Explain it to them." Valenti gestured to the room full of men who had followed him for 20 years. Marco looked around and found no allies, only disgust. His own crew stepped away from him like he was contaminated. "You have until sunrise to leave New York," Valenti said. "If I ever see you again, you will not walk away." Marco ran. The door slammed behind him with enough force to rattle the windows. But what Marco did not know was that Valenti had already made sure every family in every city knows what he did. There was nowhere left to run. His empire was crumbling while he was still running down the stairs. Aria stood in the rain beside Alessandro Valenti, watching the police vehicle take Harold Brennan away. The locket pressed against her heart like a prayer. "It is over," Valenti said. He was not asking her. He was telling her what she had already learned, that sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light. 1 month had passed since the rain stopped falling on the streets of New York, and Elena Pierce stood in the doorway of a studio apartment on the Upper West Side that was, for the first time in 8 years, entirely her own. The landlord, a woman named Mrs. Chen who was 73 years old and asked no questions about the past, had handed her a single brass key. Elena held it like it was made of gold. The apartment was empty except for afternoon light falling through 2 windows, and when Mrs. Chen left her alone, Elena sat down on the hardwood floor and cried, but not the kind of crying that comes from breaking. This was the kind that comes from finally being allowed to put the pieces back together. The first week, she bought a mattress from a second-hand store and placed it in the corner. She bought dishes, real dishes, not stolen from diners. She bought a plant, a small green thing with leaves the color of hope, and placed it on the windowsill where the sun touched it every morning at 7. She watered it every day. The plant did not die. Neither did she. 3 weeks into living alone in her own space, Elena met Sophia Langford at the Italian cafe on Madison Avenue, the same cafe where Alessandro Valenti had first given her the envelope containing $5,000. Sophia wore dark glasses even inside the restaurant because the world was still too bright for her recovering eyes. She moved carefully, one hand reaching out before her like a question mark, testing the air for obstacles. Elena took her hand. "Same table as last time?" Elena asked. "Yes," Sophia said, and there was something different in her voice now, not the caution of someone trapped, but the curiosity of someone learning to trust again. "Will you sit with me? Everyone else sits across from me, like I am a problem to be solved from a distance." Elena sat beside her. The waiter brought water and bread. The sound of the city moved through the open windows like breathing. "You saved my life twice," Sophia said, not looking at Elena but at the space in front of her where the light fell. "Once from those men in the basement, and once from the loneliness that comes after violence." Do you know what that is like? To be saved twice by the same person. Elena set her hand on Sophia's wrist, and she felt the pulse there, steady and alive. You saved mine too, Elena said. The night those men came after me, when you called the police and told them exactly where I was hiding. You reminded me that I was worth saving. That was the most dangerous thing you could have done, because I had stopped believing it. Sophia turned her head toward the sound of Elena's voice. Then we are even. They ate pasta and shared a tiramisu that tasted like the kind of sweetness that only comes after you have tasted bitterness long enough to understand the difference. When they left the cafe, Sophia held Elena's arm. They walked slowly down Madison Avenue, and for the first time in memory, Elena was not thinking about where she would sleep that night. Meanwhile, in a brownstone 3 blocks away, Elena sat in a therapist's office for the first time. The therapist's name was Dr. Reeves, and she was a woman of about 60 with grey hair pulled back and hands that stayed still when she listened. The office smelled like lavender and old books, and there was silence in it, not the silence of fear, but the silence of safety. I want to talk about your back, Dr. Reeves said gently. It was the 4th session. The first 3 sessions Elena had only talked about the cold and the hunger and the fear of being seen. Elena stood and turned away. She lifted her shirt slowly. The scars ran in every direction like a map of hell drawn by someone who had no mercy. Some were thin as spider silk. Some were wide as fingers. Some had faded to white. Some were still red, still angry, still remembering. Dr. Reeves did not flinch. She did not look away. She did not make a sound that suggested pity. You did not just survive, Elena, the therapist said. You protected yourself when nobody else would. That is not weakness. That is the kind of strength that most people will never understand because they have never had to manufacture it from nothing. Elena pulled her shirt back down. She sat again. She had never told anyone about those scars. Not one person in 8 years. The locket her mother had given her had hung against her skin while the scars formed, and she had never shown it to a soul. But now someone knew. And she was still here. And the world had not ended. That evening, Alessandro Valenti climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor of his penthouse and opened a door he had not opened in 8 years. The nursery was exactly as he had left it. The crib. The mobile with hanging stars. The rocking chair where he had held his son Oliver for exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes before the fever took him. The paintings on the wall of animals that his wife had done, each one signed for Oliver, with all my love in script that had grown fainter as her illness progressed. He sat in the rocking chair. The wood creaked. Outside, the city moved in its endless rhythm, but up here, in this room frozen in time, there was only memory. I met someone, Valenti said aloud. His voice sounded strange in the silence, like an echo that had traveled years to return. She stood in front of armed men for you. For Sophia. She did not know them. She did not know me. She stood there with nothing but courage and a voice that trembled like a candle in the wind, and she made them hesitate. That was enough. He rocked slowly. The chair moved back and forth, like the motion of time itself. I do not know what she is to me yet. I do not know what I am to her. But I wanted you to know that I met someone who reminded me that light still exists, Oliver. I wanted you to know that I have not forgotten how to see it. He placed his hand on the wall where Oliver's name was painted in gold letters. I think you would have liked her. When he left the nursery this time, he did not lock the door. It stood open like an invitation to the future. But what neither Elena nor Valenti knew was that their paths would remain separated for an entire year. Elena needed to become whole on her own first, rebuilding the foundation that Harold Brennan and 8 years of survival had cracked. And Valenti needed to understand the difference between protection and possession, between watching someone and holding them captive. They needed to learn, separately, in silence and in solitude, that real love is not about saving someone. It is about standing beside them while they save themselves. 1 year later. Elena Pierce stood on a penthouse balcony overlooking New York City, but this penthouse was her own. Not given to her. built by her. 47 stories above the street, the city spread out like a circuit board of light, and she looked at it with the eyes of someone who had learned that she deserved to stand in high places. She wore a simple black dress. Her hair had grown past her shoulders, and the natural curl had returned now that she was no longer sleeping in her car. The scars on her back were still there, they would always be there, but she no longer hid them. Sometimes in the summer heat she wore backless dresses, and strangers would ask, and she would tell them the truth. She had learned that her scars were not her shame. They were proof that she had survived. Every Friday, a white rose was delivered to her office at the non-profit she had founded. The roses came with no card, no name, no explanation. Elena suspected who sent them, but she had never asked. Some mysteries are more beautiful when they remain unsolved. She had not seen Alessandro Valenti in person in 364 days. Not since the night in the rain when he had told her it was over. They had not spoken. They had not exchanged messages. But somehow, in that year of silence, something had shifted between them. Or perhaps something had been built, slowly, in the space between the distance. The charity event downstairs was her own event, a gala to raise funds for the housing initiative she had created. 73 women had moved from the streets into permanent housing in the past year. 73 women who had slept in cars and gas station bathrooms, who had counted pennies and rationed food, who had learned to make themselves invisible. Elena had given them the thing that nobody had given her, a chance to be seen. Behind her, the glass door to the balcony opened. The sound of it was like a secret being told. Elena turned. Alessandro Valenti stood in the doorway, framed by the light from inside. He wore a charcoal suit, tailored to perfection, and his face had aged in the way that men who carry heavy things age, not with weakness, but with depth. His eyes, which had been empty for so long, now held something that looked like light. "How did you get up here?" Elena asked. Her heart was moving fast. She could hear it in her own ears like a rhythm she had almost forgotten. "I still have friends in security," Valenti said. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. It might have been the beginning of a smile. "That is called breaking and entering," Elena said. "Technically I was invited to the event downstairs. I simply took a wrong turn and found myself on the wrong floor." He stepped onto the balcony. The night air moved between them. "I have been taking a lot of wrong turns lately, Elena. All of them seemed to lead here." They stood with the city beneath them, two people who had learned opposite lessons from the same pain. Elena had learned that the world could be survived. Valenti had learned that survival was not enough. He had learned it from watching her stand in the rain with rainwater running down her face and determination in her eyes like a blade. "I need to tell you something I should have said a year ago," Valenti said. His voice was steady, but Elena could hear the cost of that steadiness in every word. "When my son died, I dismantled everything inside myself that could feel. I thought that was strength. I thought numbness was the only armor strong enough to protect against that kind of pain. Then you stood in front of armed men for my sister, and I realized I had been confusing the two. You did not save just Sophia that night. You reminded me what courage actually looks like." Elena waited. She had learned in therapy that sometimes the most important thing you can do is let other people speak. "For 8 years you carried invisible scars and nobody saw your war," Valenti continued. "But I see you, Elena. I have always seen you. And I spent this year learning that sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light. I spent this year sitting in a room I had locked for 8 years, and I finally understood something: real love is not possession. It is witness. It is seeing someone completely and choosing to stand beside them anyway." Elena stepped forward. She did not ask permission. She took his hand, and his fingers closed around hers like they had been waiting for this moment since the night in the rain. His palm was warm. His grip was gentle. "I do not know what happens now," Elena said. "I do not know what I am supposed to do when the man who changed my life stands in front of me and speaks truth like a prayer." "Neither do I," Valenti said. But I know that I do not want to spend another year wondering what might have happened if I had been brave enough to find you sooner. They stood together as the city moved beneath them, as the lights of New York burned like 1,000 small fires, and neither of them needed to say anything else. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of all the words they had not spoken during the year of waiting. Sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light. And sometimes the people who have lost everything are the only ones who truly understand what it means to give without taking. Elena Pierce slept in her car and washed her face in gas station bathrooms, and she saved a Mafia boss's sister from violence with nothing but courage. A year later she stood on her own penthouse balcony and realized that the only person who ever needed to save her was herself. But the people who loved her made sure she had the chance to try. If this story moved you, drop a like right now. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength. Subscribe because tomorrow we bring you another story about the people who refuse to stay invisible. Comment below, what would you have done in Elena's position? We read every single comment. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.